Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In, recorded on December the 4th, 2024. I'm your host, Robert Swarthout, and I'm joined by my co-host, Andres Sandate. How's it going, Andres?
Hey, good, Robert. Happy holidays. Taking the event remote today, but good to see you.
Good to see you, yeah. We had Thanksgiving last week, and now we're gearing up for Christmas. So we, crypto has felt like Christmas the last week. There's been lots of gains. At least in the altcoins. Bitcoin's largely been flat the last week, but it's been quite the journey for some of these tokens, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit here in one of our bullet points. So probably just jump right in here. The first one, is news, but it's not news. I mean, it kind of doesn't really affect us here in the U.S. Russia, or Putin in particular, signed a bill that basically legalized Bitcoin and recognized it as property in Russia. I find this interesting just solely because the whole talk about the U.S. potentially doing a strategic reserve, potentially a bill coming along in this next Congress that might do that, it kind of creates competition, right? I mean, it's the media is going to spin it that way, I would imagine, if it happens. But is it truly competition? I don't know. But I just find it fascinating how it's all unfolding. I would have never guessed that countries were fighting over Bitcoin a year ago, or could be fighting over Bitcoin.
Yeah, do you think more countries are going to follow this move on Russia's part?
More countries, possibly. More big countries. I don't know. You also wonder how the EU would deal with this. Will the EU want to buy Bitcoin? It doesn't feel like a right fit for them. But they are obviously a collection of countries. You even have news today. It's not on our list here, but Florida passed a bill. They're going to do their own strategic Bitcoin reserve. So you might have states. You're going to probably likely see companies do it. Microsoft's one that's been pitched recently. I think it's a bit of a snowball. And I get maybe businesses doing it. I don't quite get why countries do it. And maybe I'm just like blind to it and I just haven't seen the light yet. But that's, I guess time will tell on that. We'll kind of move on to our next thing here. So this is a stable coin that Ripple's launching. It has been approved in New York. The New York Financial Service, the Department of Services, has approved it. Ripple's basically the one that's going to have to launch it. That it could happen any day. Likely will happen after we finish recording today. Is typically how these things go. But we tend to record in the early afternoon, and then somehow news breaks an hour later. But I think the big headline here is, at the end of the day, it's not something that impacts the XRP ledger today, tomorrow. Over time is where it has its impact. It brings liquidity in the system. It brings developers in. You've seen this happen with Ethereum. You've seen it happen on Tron and the other ones that have USDT or USDC. This is a bit of a competitor to those. And, I think we mentioned it a couple episodes ago, but it's one point, Ripple was minting on a daily basis 20% of all the new USDC being created for their clients. So that will be created here. There certainly will be demand creation, and how it kind of plays out will be fascinating.
Yeah, is this an example of New York moving quicker than other states, or is this from the beginning? This is where Ripple had kind of put a stake in the ground and said they wanted to, I guess, set this up and work through their, regulators.
I think it's a couple things. New York has had this framework for stablecoins for a couple of years now, at least. It's been a while, at least in crypto terms. And, you can also make the case that New York is the financial center of the world. So it's like, if you're going to do one, you're probably going to try to do it there, especially if they have a framework. Many states don't. Wyoming does, but that one's a little bit wonky. At the end of the day, I think it's just them trying to be where everybody probably would want them to be, admittedly, if to be taken seriously. So the U.S. needs, again, beating the drum again, the U.S. needs regulation, and stablecoin regulation is likely to be the first out of the gate. And I think this could set, maybe this is an example of how it should be done. I think a lot can be taken away from this. There's very few people that complain about this one. So I think, again, there's regulators and legislators in the the U.S. houses need to maybe use this as a model to go after, or model to copy. Our next bullet point, immediately 2 weeks ago, I had never, or 3 weeks ago, I don't think this term had been used, but it's dino tokens. It's referred to dinosaur tokens. It's basically akin to saying blue chips. Tokens that have been around for a long period of time, that have seen multiple bull runs. People that aren't in crypto all the time might be able to say a few of these names because they'll come in and buy these when the runs are going crazy. Then they forget about them for 3 years and they come back, rinse and repeat. But what's interesting about them this time is these are the tokens that Teton focuses on. So I've spent a lot of time researching these, but more specifically, they're utility tokens, and they're trying to solve a problem, whether it's in business or whether it's in retail, but they're utility in nature. And they have had an amazing run the last 2 weeks. And amazing is probably an understatement, admittedly. But it's early. I mean, this cycle's acting a little bit different than previous cycles. This is the way that I've experienced them. I don't know if it's because there's ETFs of Bitcoin. I don't know if because there's potential regulation. I don't know if it's because of Bitcoin. There's a lot of potential reasons. But at the end of the day, I believe that this is something that it's something to watch. Because I believe these are the tokens as there becomes real utility. And admittedly, there's not right now. But when there is, these are the tokens I think that will really act differently, even if it is a bear market. You'll start to see some demand for them.
Any idea where the term originated, and do you like it?
Yeah, I think that the term probably just comes from meaning old. I mean, crypto.
Yeah.
I mean, Bitcoin is 15 years old.
Sure.
XRP being the second oldest, a couple years younger. I don't think that it really. I mean, it's meant to be old. It's a bit of a meme. Crypto loves its memes.
Sure.
I think it comes from that. Do I like it? Maybe I like that the basket has a name rather than saying utility tokens. I think people kind of gloss over that and don't really know what it means. Don't care what it means. Does dino tokens mean more people want to come in and buy them potentially? Is that good for me? Maybe. Like I could have selfish reasons that I like it. I don't have a reason not to like it right now. So I guess we can go with that.
Fair enough. Well, we got a lot of dino in the news then, because our next topic is that XRP's performance has outstripped BTC since 23.
Yeah, it's since 20, and it came out of nowhere, right? It had underperformed for call it 23 months, and then all of a sudden, the last week and a half, 2 weeks, it has been up and to the right at a very vicious angle. A week ago when we recorded, XRP was around $1.50 a token. It is now at 243. It's been all the way up to 280. That's a huge percentage change. It doesn't sound like a lot because it's like basically a buck, but it went from before the election being at 50 cents up to 250. So 5x increase in the matter of 3 weeks. And, it's outstriped Bitcoin. I think that there's multiple, again, these dino tokens, that basket, I believe will outperform Bitcoin. Certainly in this cycle. And if you kind of rewind from January 23 forward through the end of this cycle, I think that they all will have outperformed Bitcoin in meaningful ways. Not financial advice. Please don't go buy them because I say that. But at the end of the day, I think they're set up for that. XRP in particular was a coiled spring. It didn't get to participate in the last cycle. And you've had a lot of positive news around the lawsuit and then what might happen going forward. And you see demand. And kind of the first sub bullet point of this one, where XRP volume is largely being institutional, was surprising the first time I saw that, because it's largely crypto's retail driven right now. Like outside of maybe some buying of the Bitcoin ETFs, it is people opening a Coinbase account and buying something in the U.S. at least. So to hear that it's institutional focused, at least in XRP's case, that came from a Falcon X, the largest OTC desk in crypto. So you tend to want to believe it. And it's just kind of crazy to see. And another way to back it up is the trading volumes yesterday. So that would have been December the 3rd. If you took Bitcoin's trading volume, Ethereum's trading volume, these are on crypto exchanges, you added that together, it was less than what XRP did. And that was XRP's second highest day ever. The first highest day was like Saturday, like 3 or 4 days ago. So it's just crazy to see how quickly things can change, sentiment and just generally like volumes. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this follows the patterns of other assets or specific securities when they fall or go, rather is the better word, and they find themselves in favor. And sometimes that means just institutional participation can morph that of retail in a short amount of time, given the dollars that are at play. The sub bullet number 3, though, no capital
Mhm.
gains on US based tokens, is that in reference to an announcement from the Trump administration incoming?
Yeah, kind of, sort of, not really, is the answer. I think I say it that way because there's a rumor going around that he has said that. He has not said it publicly. So, in my opinion, he hasn't said it at all if he hasn't said it publicly. I know that they want to do some work on taxes. I think the idea that they're going to treat cryptos that are US based differently than other cryptos, fascinating, because Bitcoin doesn't fall in that bucket. Ethereum doesn't fall in that bucket. You really start to get into the Dynamo tokens, XRP, not all of them, but some of them. They kind of fit that mold. And like, what's the motivation? I don't know. This could be. I admittedly, I could hear, like, imagine Trump saying this. This is not something that's coming out of left field necessarily. I just don't think it's terribly realistic that it actually gets across the finish line. But again, would be cool to see it happen. I think that you start to wonder, like, maybe it's not zero tax; it's taxed differently, it's taxed more efficiently, because they're going to be used for things. You don't want to be dealing with a taxable transaction every time you go in and out of these, if it fits a certain set of rules. I could see it being that versus zero tax across the board. But time will tell. And that's, again, that would be more. I could also see being an institutional focus. If you're a retail trader, it probably doesn't apply to you. Like,
Hmm.
there could be all sorts of rules around it. Um,
Right.
yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
like you said, when you're talking about the utility of some of the tokens, the fact of the matter is having a levy or a tax or some type of surcharge on every transaction multiplied by the volume really doesn't make a lot of sense. So be interesting, something to watch, because like any asset class that starts to attract a lot of capital, a lot of investors, and the whole idea of capital gains and carried interest has been kind of a hot button topic. You hear about it whenever there's an election. We haven't seen carried interest changed largely over multiple election cycles, although it does seem to prop its head. So now that Bitcoin and crypto and digital assets are becoming more and more accepted and more mainstream, although I think there's still a long way to go, we both would agree.
yeah.
You have to think that the tax regime uh, is not far behind in terms of how they're
Mhm.
expected and how they will, want to get their slice of the pie.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that, in a lot of ways, the IRS can move faster than regulations because they kind of make their own rules as they go, unless Congress dictates it needs to be done differently, is my understanding on how that works. So, for better or for worse. But yeah, I mean, I guess anybody would be for zero tax, but maybe realistic expectations are important here. Our next topic, just kind of more of a catch up where we've talked about in the past. So there's been some Solana ETFs, XRP ETF applications in the works. I think there's 5 for Solana, 4 or 5 for XRP at this point. You're starting to see not just notices saying that they're coming, they're actually submitting their S1s. This is not something that happens this month. I don't even think it happens before the election. I don't think there's like any chance. I think it's purely like a late Q1, early Q2 at best situation. But Solana hasn't done as much moving as, say, XRP has. XRP has, again, been on that amazing run of like basically a 5x. You start to add in potential demand from an ETF. You potentially have the lawsuit getting settled, and you have the stablecoin getting launched. There's a lot of potential positive news that's really yet to really come to fruition, but it's close, and it could add demand, and things could get crazy real quickly. A lot of euphoria, and you got to be careful. Have targets, have a plan and work your plan. That's what you need to be doing if you own crypto these days. So moving on, our second to last topic here is, it's been rumored different people might be the SEC chair. Trump hasn't officially announced it, but all signs point to Paul Atkins being the new SEC chair, being nominated by Trump. And crypto seems pretty happy about this. I think there's one question that needs to be asked of him in his hearing where he kind of gets drilled or grilled, is how he feels about DeFi and self-custody. If he says he's for it, crypto's awesome. It'll be great. If he says anything but that, I think there's a moment of pause. Crypto may not have the winner that they think that they do in Paul, but maybe we get surprised. He hasn't specifically asked that question. He's kind of talked around the edges in different interviews that I've listened to, and I tend to think that he would answer yes to that. But there's other times I'm like, maybe he was grumpy that day. I don't know. And like, you just never know.
Yeah, I mean, so much speculation around who this nominee is going to be. I think that, the good thing is this is a known quantity within the crypto and digital asset space. Practiced big law, been involved in a number of trade organizations and organizations that are generally, I think by all stretch of the imagination, pro crypto. As we've talked about in the past, Gensler came in having at least a background that you thought was going to be pro crypto based on his academic teachings and some of the things that he had done from lecture standpoint didn't turn out to be the case. So I know that the crypto industry is watching this appointment closely, and we have seen some some appointments made over the last couple of weeks where folks have jostled around. So until you get through hearings and you get through all the the background of the individual, I think it's a lot of speculation.
Yeah, and he's got close ties to the digital chamber. And why do I mention that? Well, by extension, Ripple and Stellar, so two different networks, but both have representatives that are very close to the chamber. So it could be that could explain part of this XRP run up, because maybe it was smart money versus this retail buying. Like, again, there's like probably a million factors here, but it's just it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. So that's where we're at right now. Our last topic is I found kind of funny when I first read it, but it makes total sense. So Brian Armstrong of Coinbase has said that he has told all the law firms that Coinbase works with, and he didn't say how many it was, but my guess is a handful or something, and basically told them that if they hire any of the attorneys that were at the SEC that were working on anti-crypto cases, they will no longer do business with those firms. And I have seen other crypto executives saying the same thing. Stu Alderati from Ripple basically says he has a list if anyone needs the list. So there might be some attorneys that are really looking for work that wanted to be in crypto that may not be able to be in crypto anymore, or may have trouble being in crypto.
Yeah, as you and I have talked about before, I mean, watch what they do, not what they say. There's a reason why there's a revolving door in DC with the regulators and the big law firms, and frankly, you could add into that the lobbyists. But the reality is people get things done generally with people they know, and it's a pretty small network of folks. So I'm going to be paying close attention to how this all plays out, because as this becomes more and more mainstream, and I zoom out 5 to 10 years, the bigger players, the Coinbases, the BlackRocks, the big Wall Street firms, they're going to get their slice of the action, and they tend to go with the folks that they know, that they've worked with over decades. So I'll be curious to see how this plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess we'll wrap up on the topic of Coinbase. Is a bit of a litmus test to figure out how the market's going, where the euphoria might be coming from. The Coinbase app is an update. We talked about it last time. This time, it is now the #1 finance app in the App Store and number 10 overall in all apps. This will be 14. It was up at 10, so it's risen over the last week. Who knows all the different reasons, but it's been up there. It's coming down. When it starts getting up into the low single digits, maybe that's a moment of pause. And we have to figure out where we're at in the market and figure out maybe we are nearing a top. But that is what we got for this show. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In. If you want to stay updated on future episodes, you can find us in any podcast player by searching Teton Crypto Capital or the Weekly Crypto Check-In. Take care.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, trading, or any other advice. The content provided is general in nature and not tailored to any individual's specific circumstances. Always conduct your own due diligence and consult with a professional financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Cryptocurrency trading involves significant risks, including, but not limited to, the potential for loss of all or a portion of your investment, market volatility, and regulatory uncertainty. The hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast are not responsible for any decisions or actions taken based on the information discussed herein. Cryptocurrency is not legal tender in many jurisdictions and is subject to market risks. Past performance does not guarantee future results. This podcast does not endorse or guarantee any investment outcomes or results. Use of this podcast implies your acceptance of this disclaimer.